It's that time of the week. Yes, this week's Cult Movie Show, your weekly look at cult movies. Please welcome your hosts, Warren and Velvet.
Well, I was going to do but I can't because my throat is just way too sore at the moment. I have been quite ill for a while. Welcome to podcast 63 of the Cult Movie Show with myself, Warren, and as always, the hostess with the mostess, Velvet. How are you today, Velvet?
I am good. I really took advantage of getting up early today, and I saw a movie super early because it just worked out that way. And now it's raining, so I was like, wow, I got to see a movie, got home. By the time I got home, it was raining, so yeah, I timed it perfectly.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, perfect timing. Saw this awesome movie that's really underrated. Haven't really heard anybody talking about it, and it's in my area. It's only playing in independent theaters, and the independent theaters are kind of out of the way in my area, so had to make a bit of a trek. But I'm so glad I went. It was the movie The Death of Stalin.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. If you have the chance to see this, even if you're not a history buff, especially if you're not a Russian history buff, you'll want to check this out. It's amazing how much comedy is in this movie, but it's just this great historical depiction, a great political satire about dictatorships and just the distrust and deception and paranoia that they breed, while also teaching a little bit about Soviet Union history. But it's really well done. It's amazing.
Yes, well, I was going to start by saying, have you seen any good movies lately? And you clearly have. I've heard nothing but good reports about the death of Stalin. In saying that, though, I know it's not going to be for everybody.
No, definitely not.
If you like an Avengers movie, or if you like the Transformers franchise, you're probably not going to like the death of Stalin. But for anyone who wants a bit of a dark comedy, bit of a thinking movie. It's meant to be, I mean, I've seen some clips from it, and they're hilarious. They're absolutely hilarious. I mean, it stars, was it Michael Palin?
Steve Buscemi is in this, and he's excellent, like absolutely flawless. Love it.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Tambor is in it. I mean, just... yeah, I was surprised because I didn't really know much about the film. I just heard some raving reviews, didn't really know much about what it was about, wasn't sure if it was supposed to be factual or not. So I was having a hard time picturing how this was supposed to be a comedy, because as all movies have, more than one version of their promotional poster, the promotional poster I've seen for this film is always a very serious looking one. And I was always kind of like, are they sure it's a comedy? Even the poster looks serious.
Yes.
And the name of the movie is Death of Stalin. Again, doesn't sound like it's going to be very funny. And then it's about the Soviet Union. Again, where's the humor? But yeah, the way they pulled this off, I mean, this movie was wow. And, okay, let's just say it this way. This movie's so good, it's banned in Russia.
Is it banned in Russia? Really?
They banned, yes, the Ministry of Culture banned it in January of this year because they say it's an insult to their icons.
But I didn't think they classified Stalin as a hero anymore. I thought he was sort of, viewed badly now.
Now, when they made this decision, they definitely weren't saying, hey, because you're making fun of Stalin. One of the characters in the movie is, forgive me if I mispronounce his name, is Khrushchev, who was one of their... Yes, was their military commander. He's very funny in the movie. And Russia said he's portrayed as an idiot in this movie.
Right.
So they didn't think that was appropriate. Let me find the actual quote for you. Here we go. Here it is. Okay, Culture Ministry's Advisory Board was quoted as saying, the film desecrates our historical symbols, the Soviet hymn, orders and medals. Marshal Zhukov is portrayed as an idiot. And they believe this would also be an affront to Russia's World War II veterans because this movie was initially released around the time of the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Stalingrad. So, unfortunately, what's entertaining for us is offensive to others sometimes. So,
I honestly hate to say, but the Ministry of Culture or whatever they're called in Russia, I mean, seriously, get a sense of humor. I mean, it's like, it's like saying in America, oh, we'll ban MASH because it doesn't make the military look very good. You know, I mean,
right?
It's a comedy. I mean, it's satire. You know, I mean, if you're going to start banning satire, I mean, where are you headed? You know, I mean, in many ways, actually, the joke about that is that what they're saying in that movie satirically is now exactly what the Russian Federation is doing. Do you know what I mean? By banning it, they're actually proving what they're saying in the movie is correct. That's the joke, you know, that I think they don't see. It's like if you're going to ban them... Anyway.
My favorite thing about this movie, The Death of Stalin, was that, okay, every single person in this movie is supposed to be portraying a historical Russian character. Of course, there's obviously made-up people, but long story short, they're all supposed to be Russians, or I should say Soviets in the Soviet Union at the time. Soviets in the Soviet Union at the time, speaking Russian language. Not one person in this movie at one time at all does a Russian accent, and it just makes the movie even funnier. Because at first, like, everybody was doing like an English accent, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're doing that direction. But then Steve Buscemi comes out, and he's full on American accent, and I'm like, wait, what? And it's just so funny. It's just like, I loved it, and that was a conscious decision by the director, because he didn't want people to get distracted by bad Russian accents. He was like, just do you. Just do what you do. That way you can improvise and you're not worried about having a good Russian accent. And it worked so well. It makes the movie even funnier. It's just such an interesting decision.
It's a movie I can't wait to see, actually.
Oh, you'll love it. You'll love it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. I haven't actually seen any... because I've been a little bit under the weather for the last couple of weeks. That's why we haven't actually been on air. But I did get to watch a little bit of TV, though. And I did actually get to see a great B grader. Well, I use the word great very, very loosely. I got to see Beyond Skyline, the sequel to Skyline.
Oh, wow.
Now, Skyline, of course, is an appalling B-grade alien abduction movie. And I got to see the sequel, which honestly I think is worse. If you want to see kickboxing aliens, like martial art kung fu aliens, then this is your movie. If you're not really into that, I don't even know if the movie's meant to be taken seriously, to be honest. So anyway, so I don't know, but it is available on Netflix. But of course, the big news, of course, of the last week, the huge news, in our world anyway, probably, you know, other people have been watching CNN with more important things, but for us, the big news, Lost in Space has, of course, is out on Netflix. Have you had a chance to see it?
I saw the first episode and almost died of boredom, but I stuck it out. And like, for me, the ending of that episode made it worth it. So, but I find the pacing of the show from that first episode, I was like, okay, I definitely want to watch this, but I am not going to marathon it. I'm going to have to pick up an episode here and there until I eventually finish the season. Because I was like, okay, there is no reason that this first episode should be boring. I was like, horrible dialogue, flat characters. There's a lot of stuff happening, but for some reason I'm nodding off. I was like, okay, I hope they fix this. But then towards the end there, I was like, okay, now I'm hooked in, but I'm going to have to watch that show with a little bit of spacing in between. I can't see myself marathoning it, which is a shame because a lot of us are looking forward to seeing this show. Well, what do you think, Warren?
I marathoned it, so I've seen the whole first season. It starts off, and I was sort of like, okay, this is interesting. About halfway through, you know, we're into episode 5, something like that, and I'm thinking, this isn't Lost in Space. Like, this should be called the Community Lost in Space, because there's like about 50 characters, right?
Wow.
And it's
okay.
okay, this isn't Lost in Space. But if you hang out till the very end, it makes sense. It makes sense. And I don't want to give away the ending because there are people who haven't seen it or they're only halfway through it or whatever. But what I will say to people is that if you were a big fan of the original, and you've been watching this, looking forward to this, and you're a bit disappointed, don't be, because it will come together in the end. That's all I'll say. It does come together in the end. And I think season 2 is going to be a lot more exciting. Like, it's going to be more to the original. It's still going to be a drama. It's not going to be a black comedy like the original was, a campy comedy, right? But it's going to be, I think much more interesting and much more loyal, I think, to the original story. This is almost a bit of a prequel in a way, and they've made some changes, and Dr. Smith is an interesting character.
Because Dr. Smith is a woman in this iteration.
Yes, and nice little homage, too, that they put in there, because the name of Dr. Smith, I don't think this is giving anything away, is Joanna Harris. That's the real name of Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith is like a stolen name, okay? And, of course, the original man who played Dr. Smith was Jonathan Harris. So I thought,
how do you like that?
I thought that was very nice. But some big differences. I mean, Dr. Smith in this one is a real psychopath. I mean, real psychopath.
Well, you know that in the first episode, you're like, whoa. Or second episode, actually. I did see a little bit of the second episode, so I was like, okay. I'm hooked in now. I'm going to watch this eventually.
Yes, where Dr. Smith, of course, in the original, is more just... he's more a troublemaker. He gets them into trouble because of his desire for wealth and like greed and all this sort of stuff. But he's not really evil. He wouldn't go around and kill somebody. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's like, although he does try to kill the Robinsons in the very first episode, of course. But that's but he does that with a bomb. That's a little bit different. But no, it's interesting, and I did like the idea that they've kind of changed it, where the powerful people now in this show are the women, not the men.
Yes, they are very powerful female characters. But yeah, that first episode, people, I'm telling you, hang in there, because it's a rough one. It's boring. It's surprisingly poorly paced, in my opinion. But then that ending, you're like, okay, now I'm hooked in. Okay, we're good to go. Because they do introduce an interesting version of our robot character that I was kind of like, okay, now this is where I'm hooked in. I'm like, okay, I got to see what they do with this, because this is way different than what I was expecting.
It's the robot. Yeah, the robot's interesting. But I have heard that, for instance, huge amounts of women have fallen in love with this show, which you kind of wouldn't really expect, but I think, one thing, the world's changing. A lot more women are enjoying science fiction now who maybe didn't originally. But I think the other thing about this is it's very Wonder Woman-esque. In other words, the main powerful characters in this are women. The men are almost the followers rather than the leaders. So it's a real turnaround. True. Yeah, so very interesting show, and I'm looking forward to season 2, I must admit.
Okay, I'm going to have to catch up with you so that we can talk more about this.
Yes.
In the realm of movies in the movie theater, I've been seeing a lot. Too many for us to talk about here today, but I'll just give you some of the highlights. I saw I Feel Pretty with Amy Schumer. It's funny. Check it out. Wrinkle in Time. Pass. It's so fucking weird. It was too weird for me. That is saying a lot.
Right.
Reese Witherspoon turned into a giant plant, was flying around, and then there was a gigantic Oprah Winfrey with rhinestone eyebrows. I just couldn't take it. I wanted to blow my brains out in the theater. I couldn't wait for it to end. Chappaquiddick, some American history for you. So if you like the Kennedys, the Kennedy family, and you're interested in seeing more dramatizations about them, here's a story about Ted Kennedy and possibly how he let a woman drown that was possibly his lover that people have forgotten about. I
don't think a lot of people forgot about it for many, many years. That made international news.
But for a lot of this generation, like I'd never even heard about this. And a lot of people I talked to were not aware of this. And it's because it happened during the weekend of the moon landing. So it's amazing how that got buried for like a lot of people in later generations. People at the time who were adults when it happened remember it freshly. People like me who were not really around when this was happening, yes. We don't learn about this. I never heard about this until I saw this movie.
There was a great comedy show from the 1980s from Britain called Not the 9 O'Clock News, which is where a lot of people first discovered Rowan Atkinson. And nice. And in that there is a great with Griff Rhys, the actor Griff Rhys Jones, and he's playing Ted Kennedy, and he's speaking, you know, at the platform, the podium, whatever, and he says, yes, my fellow Americans, I think I have learnt quite a lot from Chappaquiddick, and that would be, don't drive across bridges when you're pissed out of your brain.
Oh, man, yeah, you know, it's an amazing piece of, wow. Just wow. But the movie is definitely worth checking out. Truth or Dare. That movie is so bad. But it was like, I was so entertained because it was so stupid. It's basically about a possessed game of Truth or Dare. And so people play Truth or Dare, make stupid faces, and they die. So you don't need to see that one in the theater. But if you like movies that are unintentionally bad, that are supposed to be scary, and they're not scary at all, you can check out Truth or Dare.
Sounds like some of the things we're going to be talking about today.
And one more I'll throw out there for you was Rampage with The Rock. I absolutely loved it. It was just ridiculous, over-the-top action with a ginormous American Sign Language signing albino gorilla. We had a giant wolf, and of course we had a giant lizard just going on a rampage, destroying shit, eating people, and of course The Rock is there to try to save the world. I was so entertained. A ton of fun, but that's just a couple of the things I've seen. I'll stop there, or we'll be there all day talking about the movies I've seen in the theater. But we got movies to review.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So, should we get started, Velvet?
Yes. Oh, my goodness, yes.
Okay. Well, our first movie is... okay, from 1966. And this is an offering from Italy, which I was really kind of excited to see.
I was too.
And then... about a quarter of the way through this, I sort of thought, what the hell have we got ourselves into? It's called War Between the Planets. Now, it's one of the Gamma movies, and we've spoken about some Gamma movies before from Italy. We did Wild Wild Planet, if you recall, Velvet. And we also, of course, did The Green Slime, which, of course, was the Japanese version when they decided that they were going to do a Gamma movie themselves. So, of course, what is Gamma? Well, Gamma is the space stations, which this is set a couple of hundred years in the future. And Gamma, there's like Gamma 1, Gamma 2, Gamma 3, and so forth. And these are all these space stations that float around space, that humans of what is now called the United Democracies. Yes, it's interesting. They still have the goodies and the baddies, the communists and the capitalists, which is really, like, they've still got this idea and it's meant to be 200 years in the future. But anyway, and it's basically all about the adventures that happen in space and on Earth through the space organization of the United Democracies. And, of course, they're all based on these space stations, which are called the Gammas. So that's just a basic concept of the various movies that have been made in this series. Now, this one, War Between the Planets, came after Wild Wild Planet. And Wild Wild Planet was so much fun. Do you remember, with all the people being kidnapped and all the rest of it, right?
And being shrunk down to travel size.
That's right. And it was so cheesy and bad that I thought, I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yes.
Well, okay. The story in War Between the Planets is that all these natural disasters are happening on Earth. Just pardon me for a second. You just talk for a second, Velvet.
No problem. Okay, so this is why we let Warren do these little summaries of these films, because he's always good at making a very concise and very logical explanation of the film, whereas if I were to describe this film, I'd be like, I don't know, I kept falling asleep.
That's okay. I'm back. Sorry, I just had to
no problem.
Cough up half my lung. Sorry. I'm still rather ill, actually. So please bear with me, everyone. So anyway, there's all these natural disasters that are happening on Earth, and so the United Democracies and the Space Force decide that they need to look into it and try to find out what's going on. Now, to cut a long story short, they find out that there is this rogue planet which is causing all of these natural disasters. So then they decide that they're going to set up a space force to fly off to the rogue planet and find out what's going on. Well, when they get there, they find out that the planet is not actually a planet. It's a living entity. It's actually alive. Man. And, of course, in true humane style, which, of course, this is 1966, the only thing to do, of course, is to kill it, is to destroy it. And that's, of course, what they attempt to do. And I don't think it's giving away too much if I say that's what they do. And then, of course, they lose some people on the way, and then they come back. They're all big heroes. And, of course, they're all very sad for the ones that they lost on the way. And that's our movie. It is so boring. It goes on
beyond boring.
It goes on forever until they actually get to this planet, right, which is some sort of space creature. I think we've gone literally an hour and 10 minutes before they even get there.
And it's not even a long movie either. The movie itself is only an hour 20.
Yeah. It takes, all it is them walking around the space stations, checking instruments, talking to each other, and a little bit of sexual innuendo that goes on, and that's it. That's the whole movie. It is, oh my goodness, incredibly dull.
I honestly didn't know what was going on until I listened to your explanation of the film. I had no idea that the rogue planet was actually a living entity because, like I said, part of the problem with this movie was, as you've already mentioned, the pacing. It's really drawn out, really slow. And for me, a big part of the problem was the way they were speaking in this movie was they're using a lot of vocabulary that just made no sense unless you worked on the ship. They're saying stuff like, we have a space problem. What does that mean? That's so vague. That could mean anything. But then they say stuff like immediate 5-7. What is that? Now you're talking in fucking numerical code? Nobody knows what that means. That's boring. You have to make it accessible to the audience. It was just, I literally kept nodding off. And I thought maybe I'm just tired. And I kept trying to watch this movie. I kept falling asleep, kept waking up, kept falling asleep, kept waking up. And then, I didn't know why they were on this planet. And I didn't know why they were being attacked by all this red goo. And red tubing and stuff was oozing and melting, and I was just like, I don't know what's going on. I was so lost.
It's the I mean, most of our movies, we said, and they're using all of this space jargon, which doesn't make any sense. It's all terrible. Alpha Delta 18. I need your coordinate B72, and half the dialogue is this, and it doesn't make really any
boring
sense. Also, the concepts of weightlessness, we can see the wires that they're hooked up to, and they literally swing from side to side when they're on the wires. It is pretty bad, but then again, it is 1966, but then again,
yes.
I've seen American, sort of like Hollywood space movies from the same period of time, and they're using wires, but they still do it better. It's like they'll use more than one wire, so the person actually looks like they're floating. In this, They just literally put a wire around their waist, so they're just spinning around and not it's really bad.
It is really bad.
And we've got all this stuff about, we've got our main commander, who is Commander Rod Jackson. And but then the problem is we've got his love interest, which is Janet Norton. And the problem is it's like they start off with the fact that they're sort of having this affair, but it sort of goes nowhere until the very end. And it's like you've got these two people who are supposedly in a relationship, but nothing ever happens. But in the end, they start living together and they adopt a child. You know,
I didn't even catch that part. Wow. Okay, I was really out of it when I was watching this.
You know,
like usually every movie we review, I have at least a full page of notes. I have a little notebook that is almost completely filled up of movies that we have reviewed, and I enjoy doing this. I enjoy watching the movie and taking notes, and so I can remind myself, oh, make sure you talk about this and ask Warren about that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With this movie, it's like I don't even have half a page of notes. I have not half, maybe 1/3 of a page. And the last 3 sentences is just, I am so bored. I have no idea what is going on. I fell asleep repeatedly. So yes. I just could not pay attention to this film. And I was just so lost. I have to admit, though, I did enjoy the model spacecrafts and helicopters that you do see at the beginning of the movie. So maybe that's where part of the budget went. And they couldn't afford to have more than one wire around a person's waist because they paid so much detail to their models. So you do see a lot of space-themed crafts that are obviously models because they have to be because, we don't have this technology yet. Or maybe we never will. But also we had silver space clothes. So silver space clothing because, they're in space. So everybody's wearing aluminum foil type outfits. But just...
well, it's yeah.
Humongous astronaut helmets. I don't know what was up with the helmets. Those were huge. Those were just 2 feet in length. They were just huge. Anyways.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's kind of, I don't know. I was actually thinking for the distance shots, they've got huge helmets because they're all different colours, so you can kind of identify which actor is meant to be in the suit. But that's my only thought. It is a real shame because
it is.
I like the other Gamma films. As I said, Wild Wild Planet. And the green slime is just so cool. I mean, it really is just so cool. And of course, there's another one. There's another couple of other Gamma films, but one of my actual favourites is War of the Planets. Okay, and that one we probably should have done rather than War Between the Planets because War of the Planets is actually really cool. It's actually. Where they've actually got space aliens and they get to meet the space aliens, and it's much more interesting. Where this one is just oh god,
yeah,
give it a miss. Seriously, give it a miss.
Seriously, give this one a miss. And even though the visuals in this were pretty actually fun because they do have that Gamma look to them. I mean, just the beautiful women, the crazy hairdos, the outfits, the weird monsters or creatures that we come across in this movie. But yeah, unfortunately, that's all overshadowed by the plot and the pacing and just lack of character development. Just yuck.
Yes, because I saw. I mean, it is interesting. There's some parts of it that are quite modern, and other parts which are just so shall we say, Italian 1960s, especially. Like for instance, there's some. The idea in this, for instance, when they refer to the women, okay, who are in the Space Force and all the rest of it, they call them Sir. So the whole idea is that it's meant to be a unisex world now, where men and women are equal. So you don't have a Sir and a Madam. You have just a Sir. Everyone uses the same title. So
I forgot about that.
Right. So it's meant to be sort of, a world of equality. But then in saying that, the women are still treated like second-hand goods. They're there to be used by the men, Men treat them badly. They're sex objects. They're, they comment on their bottoms and their boobs when they walk past, and no one seems to, care about this. In fact, the women quite like it. I mean, it's just, it's so sort of Hey, hun, get your tushy in here. And then there's that sort of like, ooh, yes, sir, I'll be in a moment. Ooh. Oh, that killed my voice. Sorry. But it's, so it's this double standard of this world of equality, but still this world of incredible sexism. But in saying that, typically Italian, beautiful actors, just absolutely gorgeous, and it's. But if you don't watch a Gamma film, which I highly recommend, I recommend everybody get into the Gamma franchise from the 60s, because I think it was a great bit of Italian and then later Japanese filmmaking, especially from a model perspective, as you've said, Velvet. With the models,
yes.
But give this one a miss.
Yes, absolutely. Give this one a miss. You've got better things to do, better things to watch. Take a nap. I mean, seriously, It's a shame because I was really looking forward to seeing this, but I was like, wow. I was like, and I really started thinking, maybe I'm watching the wrong movie. Like maybe because, as you said, there's also War of the Planets, and I was like, maybe I picked the wrong one. Maybe Warren meant the other one. No, he meant this one. Oh,
I meant this one, and the reason was I hadn't seen this one. That was the reason why. So I thought, all right, we'll give this one a go. A bad mistake, absolutely. Bad mistake.
But I am glad that I've seen it now, because now I know it exists. And this is also one of those movies where the poster is so cool. Yeah. And the poster is definitely better than the movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I love 1960s Italian cinema because it's so, it's so suave and sophisticated. I'm not saying this film is, but.
No, not this one.
But, like the people just, they just look so cool. Well, everything Italian looks cool, doesn't it?
Yes.
I mean, you think about
definitely.
Italian design, whether it be Italian clothes, Italian cars. Yes. There's just something. Italy just oozes coolness and suaveness, But this movie didn't really.
The movie sucks.
No. And the other thing too is what I want to know too is that why in the Gamma films are the leading ladies always redheads? Have you in every single one there were a redhead?
You're right. I did not notice that. Wow, I didn't realize that till you said that. That's very true. Evidently, that was a beauty standard, I guess, at the time. I guess that was just something women wanted to attain, or that's what the media wanted women to believe they should be. I don't know.
To be
redheads?
I didn't realize
that. I guess so. I don't know.
I don't know, but I just have noticed every single Gamma film I've seen, the leading women are all redheads. It's just
that's true.
How
interesting.
So I don't know. Yeah, but. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, I mean, I am actually in honour because we were doing a space movie. I'm actually wearing one of my space watches today. I'm actually wearing my Boulevard Moon watch, which is the homage watch to the watch worn by Dave Scott on Apollo 15 in 1971.
Wow.
Obviously not the original. The original sold for $1.5 million at auction a few years ago. So mine is obviously the modern version, but so I'm wearing that in homage, and I probably shouldn't have actually. Because I don't think this movie quite comes up to the standards to be doing anything.
It doesn't deserve such an honor.
No, to be wearing the Apollo 15 moon watch. No, not really. No. Interesting story about that watch, but I won't bore you with it. Yes, how a company that wasn't the official watch of NASA got to be worn on the moon. It's a very fascinating story in itself. So I don't think we've got much more to really say about it.
No, unfortunately not. It's just bizarre when they land on this living entity / planet, and that's when this movie becomes full on what the fuck, because you're just like, there's, like I said, there's red ooze and there's like rubber tubes and people are getting sucked into it. And I didn't know what was going on at all. I was so lost. I was like, Why are they on the planet? I was lost. I didn't know what was going on because I couldn't stay awake.
Yes.
I was just lost. Every time I woke up, just some weird shit was going on. I'm like, what in the world? And I was like, how many times can I fall asleep during a movie that's only an hour and 20 minutes? That's really the fascinating question, because I was just, wow.
Yeah, no, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah,
so how are we going to score it?
Okay, I think, I don't give these out too often, but this one's definitely getting a 1.
Yeah,
I'm getting a 1.
I'm going to go the same way, because I'm going to give it a 1 because it's a 1 out of 5 Eric's, because it gets 1 because the model making is cool. I like that 1960s.
I like the model making. And I have to admit that Helena, what's her name again? Zalwenska, who plays our leading lady, is absolutely gorgeous. So they get a little bit of extra credit for that as well. Who's actually a Polish actress, not Italian. Out of interest, yeah. Interesting.
Or was. So I don't even know if she's still alive.
For those that are not familiar with our rating system, in case you're tuning in for the first time, sorry, we kind of jumped into that. Eric Roberts, he is the king actor of B movies. He's got over 300 movie credits, actually over 400 movie credits.
That's
so we call him the king of B movies. Isn't that crazy? So we rate our movies on a scale of 1 to 5 Erics. 5 Erics being the best, 1 being an absolute piece of shit, and that's what this movie is. So, Eric from both of us.
It's a total pile of dog turd. Is what it is. I mean, it is bad. It is really bad. It is really
my God.
bad.
So terrible.
All right. Well, we'll take a quick break, and because my voice is about to go, and we'll be right back with our mini movie of this week.
It's time to get excited, short film fans. It's mini movie review time.
It most definitely is. And I'm going to give my voice a little bit of a break, Velvet. So please, what was our choice for this week?
All right, our choice for this week and the last couple of weeks.
Actually, yes, I know.
I try to tweet it every week when we thought we were going to come back, but these things happen. But no, still feel very strongly about this one. Still really like this one. This one is called Papers, Please. This is a short film by Kinodome Productions. It is in Russian language, so if you don't speak Russian, don't understand Russian, you are able to view this film on YouTube with captions in a couple of different languages. So our language of choice for Warren and I was English.
Yes.
So basically we have a fictional Eastern Bloc country, and we have a little border town, and we're dealing with the passport control officer who sits in his booth, and he gets to decide whether people get to cross over from the border of Arstotzka to Kalechia. And Kalechia must be the place to be, because all day long people are trying to get over there to visit family members, to start jobs, just to go visit, just to go shopping. And he has to find inconsistencies in their passports and deny people access. I know this does not sound very interesting the way I'm describing it.
Yes.
But you have to realize that when you're watching this, the acting is very on point from what I can tell, being that there's obviously a language barrier for me. But the acting is very well conveyed in the faces of the actors as they interact with each other. And you also realize there's a rebellion of some sort going on that he might get pulled into. And let's just say the ending will blow you away, because that's kind of what happens to our poor passport control guy and this moral dilemma that he faces every time he denies or grants access for people from Arstotzka to Kalechia. So what did you think of this mini movie, Warren?
Well, I didn't really know what to make of it, to be truthful. It's very interesting, but I sort of wonder, I don't quite know what the message is they're trying to portray, I mean, is it sort of like a statement about what happens in certain parts of the world, or is it actually a personal love affair with the fact that we must have borders, we must have walls, because if we don't, bad stuff will happen. I really don't quite know what they're trying to achieve. What did you think?
You know what? I honestly wasn't sure either. And honestly, when I first watched this film, I was like, well, that was entertaining. And I always try to stick around for the credits because sometimes I learned something. Sometimes there just might be a post-credit sequence, or you might see something written in the credits. And in this case, right at the end of the credits, it actually says, Papers, Please, the short film based on the video game. I was like, wait, what?
Right, okay.
What do you mean video game? And this is what made it really fun for me. So based on the game by Lucas Pope. So I actually had to look at this, did a little research online. So yes, it turns out that Papers, Please is actually based on a video game that has 22 separate endings depending on how well you're able to weed out who has legitimate reasons to go across the border and who doesn't. And they have like involved plots where you actually are part of the rebellion and they end up killing your whole family and you get sent to jail, or like you actually end up smuggling yourself and your family out and you live happily ever after. But out of all 22 possible endings for the game, there's only 2 happy endings. So I was just like,
right.
So I just thought it was neat to see a video game with a really simple premise be made into this really cool 10-minute short film. So the film debuted worldwide via YouTube and the Steam storefront in February 2018. The film's received overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam upon its release, but the film premiered actually in Moscow, Russia. So actually, you know, obviously Russian actors shot in Russia. So I just thought it was really interesting. So long story short, the answer to your question is, Warren, I don't think there was a message. It was just a movie they made based on a video game.
So, well, sometimes that's all it is, isn't it? You know?
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's like that. I think I've told this story before when we were studying Animal Farm at school, and and of course, you know how it's a statement about Stalinism and, you know,
yes.
all that sort of stuff, right? So but I can still remember one great, I don't know, I should say great wit, I don't know if that's right, but interesting character at school stood up and sort of said, did anyone ever think that he just wanted to write a funny story about animals? You know, so, it's, I mean, that's interesting. There is no message. It's just based on a what if game, you know?
Exactly.
Sort of
it's
thing.
just pure entertainment, which I value pure entertainment. I like it when entertainment has a message, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just entertaining.
I think
oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
No,
I'm sorry, go
on.
ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go on.
Okay, like I was just going to say really quick, for example, the stop motion animation film that's recently been released that's still in some theaters here in the United States, Isle of Dogs, is really a movie just about people who love dogs. There is no strong message to this movie at all.
Yeah.
And it's received quite a bit of criticism. But you know what? I love dogs. So I love this movie, Isle of Dogs, because I was so entertained by the artwork, and I just loved seeing all these different iterations and the details of the dogs, and I loved it. But it has no message. It really is.
Yes.
It really is just a movie about people who love dogs.
Dogs, yeah. I think that's the thing about this. You know, if this movie is, as you said, it's taken from a video game, so it's just a bit of fun.
Yes.
But I think one of the issues is a lot of people are going to see a message in this, you know, and the message they see is going to be very interesting, I think, depending on your point of view about the world right now. You know, it's like there are a lot of people who believe that, you know, we should all be trying to be friendly with each other and lower borders and talk more, you know, rather than go down the other route, where there's another, you know, very strong group of people who want to talk less and build walls. So it's like, and this movie, I think, for a lot of those people who, let's say, very politically active, are going to watch this little short and going to say, oh, see, that validates what I think, or no, that's so against, you know, what we should be doing, when they're not necessarily trying to do that. They're actually just making a movie about a video game.
Exactly.
But if you don't know about that, I think a lot of people are going to watch that and say, yeah, see, this is why we need a wall. This is why we need a wall, you know? And you're going to see other people are going to be saying, see, this is why we don't want a wall, because it's so cruel, it's so horrible, it's so nasty, right? So
exactly.
And people are going to write, stuff into it. It's like many years ago in Australia, there was a politician who was actually, he was kind of viewed at the time a little bit like the current US president, because he was beloved by a lot of people and just hated so much by a lot of other group of people. And there was a comedy duo who brought out a song called Bloody Jeff, because his name was Jeff Kennett. And the song was just a bit called Bloody Jeff, and all it was about, like, everything that was wrong in the world, it was bloody Jeff. It was Jeff's fault, The chains for the pens in the bank are too short. Bloody Jeff. It was all that sort of thing, right? But the thing was, it was taken both ways by people who listened to it, because the people who hated this guy, Jeff Kennett, said, it's speaking to my soul. We hate Jeff Kennett. But these other people who love Jeff Kennett also loved the song because they said, this is typical, blaming him for everything that's not his fault. So it's amazing how people read, or am I making sense in what I'm saying, or am I just talking shit? I don't know. I'm probably talking shit, but I think that's the thing about this movie. It's like you can see anything in it that you want to see in it. You're going to put your own thoughts into this, and maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should just watch it.
Yeah, just sit back and enjoy. But honestly, the performances in the film I find are really strong. You can really see the people that are eager to get across the border, and they're really devastated when their passport is denied. And you can see how overjoyed they are when their passport is accepted and they're let through. And then you also see the moral dilemma that the passport inspector himself faces, because he feels guilty. He wants to be able to let everybody through, but he's got a job to fulfill. And I mean, I think the acting is really strong in this short film.
Oh, yeah.
Whether there's a message or not.
and the cinematography is very good too. It just looked so dark and so miserable. It's sort of like, it's the way I think anyone who, I mean, probably a little bit different if you lived in Berlin, during the Cold War. But for anyone who hadn't had that opportunity, I think this is the way I think a lot of people viewed, like that wall. Everything was dark and horrible and miserable. And this movie does actually sort of definitely gives you that feeling. Everything's dark and nasty and poor. Like people are being oppressed and they're deprived and everybody's, in poverty. Like they'll get a whole new life on the other side in Kolechia. And I love that they used, the fictional names so that you could really make it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be Eastern Bloc, even though it's Russian language in the short film. But I like the whole fictional countries and borders, and I like that kind of stuff. Well, it's interesting Russian Ministry of Culture didn't ban this one.
Because they didn't specifically say Soviet Union or Russia.
Well, they didn't say Russia, did they? I know.
And it wasn't in English language.
Yes.
All right. So if you would like to watch Papers, Please, you can watch this on YouTube. Just type in Papers, Please, the short film, and you will be able to check that out. You can also check out our feed on Twitter at Cult Movie Show. We've tweeted out the link to this short film a couple of times, and go watch it. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and tell them that Cult Movie Show sent you.
Most definitely. So, before we go, are we going to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Because we don't really rate it.
I like it. I really like thumbs up. Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up. I like it.
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up too. I think it's I thought it was a bit of fun, a bit quite interesting. Yeah, so thumbs up from me as well. All right. Well, we'll just take a quick musical break and we will be back with our second film.
Yay.
Making love on the edge of a night.
And we are back, and that was, of course, the Jesus and Mary chain with April Skies. Oh, you gotta love a good punk rock surfer band. I mean, you know, don't the two things go hand in hand? Black leather and surfboards? I mean, you know.
Definitely.
Oh, dearie me. Dearie me. All right. So, our second movie, and this one, I have to admit, is very close to my heart, and I will explain why in just a bit. But we are going to Hong Kong, and 2000, the year 2000, for the movie Tokyo Raiders. And this is, I suppose, what you might call a action comedy. I suppose maybe you might refer to it. Maybe you just might refer to it as just an action film. But I think it's a bit more than that. I think it is actually, to a degree, an action comedy. It's quite humorous in parts. Mm-hmm. And what is our basic story? Well, it gets a little bit confusing, I have to admit, because it's sort of it's a martial arts film. While it's a bit of a comedy at the same time, while it's kind of a crime thriller, while it's kind of a spy film, all thrown into one. So you've got quite a number of genres all going on simultaneously here.
Yes.
Now, it stars Tony Leung, who of course is a very famous Chinese actor, been in tons of American films, not just obviously Chinese films. Was it Ekin Cheng, Kelly Chen, who is a huge Chinese star, Celia Chung, another who's actually, I think, more a singer than she actually is an actor, but a very famous Chinese singer. And so it's not a pretty big cast, you know, in regards to a Chinese film. Now, our story basically revolves around a young woman called Macy, played by Kelly Chen. And she gets stood up in Las Vegas by her fiance for a wedding. So she goes back to, and she's eloped, like her father doesn't agree and all this sort of stuff. So she goes back to Hong Kong, and she meets up with a young guy called, what's his name? I think he's just called Pat, isn't he? Played by Ekin Cheng. And yes, I know. And anyway, and he is meant to be an interior decorator who's been building the house for our young couple. And of course, now that the wedding's off and her fiance has disappeared, he wants his money. So she's trying to find out where her boyfriend is, and she flies to Tokyo, and he goes with her because he wants his money. At least that's what we think what's going on. They then meet up with Tony Leung, who basically is meant to be a private investigator who is also looking for her fiancé. And the three of them sort of join together in this hunt for the boyfriend. But the thing is that they're not all who they seem to be. Tony Leung basically says that he's a private detective, but is he a private detective? Or does he actually work for the Japanese government? Also, Pat, Ekin Cheng, is he an interior decorator, or is he actually a private investigator and bodyguard? Well, it gets pretty confusing, and all the way through the film, we never really quite know because they keep changing their story all the time. But all we do know is that they are all trying to find the boyfriend, and at the same time, they're trying to protect Macy, who, of course, they've become quite close to. And there will be a whole heap of basically kung fu, martial art fights all the way through the movie until they finally do track him down, and then suddenly all will be revealed about who they really are and what they're trying to do, and so forth. That's just a brief rundown of the film. I think it's quite a lot of fun. What did you think, Velvet?
I thought, I don't know. I was confused by this movie too. I was just like, wait, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And obviously you and I most likely watched this movie either with English subtitles or an English dub. And that was kind of confusing too, because you had a whole lot of this whole thing about we have Japanese characters and Chinese characters. And then they're like, oh, you're Chinese, but you speak Japanese. Well, your Japanese really bad. So like all these lost in translation jokes because we couldn't hear the accents and that are obviously supposed to be part of the comedic elements of this film. But I have to admit that woman being ghosted by her fiance, that's some very traumatic shit. And I just thought that she handled that way too. Her affect was just so flat. I would have been much more emotional, I must say. So, I don't know. I was not really feeling this movie. The shooting style of this movie I found highly annoying. The overall style, they did like a lot of slow-mo shots while they were doing fight scenes, and they would be switching camera angles like erratically and then slowing it down and just like, I don't know. It was like almost too action-packed, if that makes any sense. There was just like so much chaotic stuff going on, cars exploding and boat chases, and I was just like, I don't know what's happening. It's just, I don't know. I found it really confusing. I was just like, it was like visual pollution. It was just like visually noisy somehow. I don't know. Wow.
Well, this was actually released as a New Year release, you know, when all the big blockbusters sort of come out. And so in a way, this is kind of like, if you want to put it in American terms, this is kind of like an Arnie movie, you know, or a Stallone movie. It's meant to be an action-packed adventure with big stars, you know, in it. But of course, if you're outside China or if you're outside the Chinese community, wherever you live, then you won't necessarily see it in that light, even though that's what, you know, the movie actually is. Interestingly enough, this was the very last movie to be released on Laserdisc.
Oh, that's right. I read that somewhere. That is interesting.
And it was actually pretty popular. In fact, it did actually spawn a sequel, which was called Soul Raiders, which was released in 2005, which has none of the original characters, and the story does not link into this story whatsoever, except for the fact that there's a young Chinese woman who goes to Seoul in South Korea, and that's about and then meets up with these guys, you know, and they get all into this, you know, these fights with, you know, gangland killers and whatnot, and it's honestly, that's, you know, there's nothing that connects the two films whatsoever. One of the reasons why I actually adore this film and love it is that when my daughter was growing up, she had a real love affair with Hong Kong cinema, okay, with Chinese cinema. And we used to watch this film over and over and over and over again because she absolutely, you know, adored it. And so it's sort of like, in my mind, it's part of my life, this movie, you know, it's part of my daughter growing up, this actual movie. And so it kind of, I mean, I can see lots of faults in this movie, and there's certain bits of dialogue which, oh my God, are not for children. I don't know how I allowed my daughter to watch some of the things they said. But, you know, hey, growing up in Australia, it's a bit different, you know. Because we'll get to some of those lines in just a minute. But that's why it's kind of so special, you know, to me, sort of thing. But I can still find lots of faults with this movie. I mean, it's like you said, one of the things I disliked about it a lot is that, well, I liked it in the sense that all the fighting is set to music, and all the fighting is set to Latin salsa music, which is really, really interesting. But because of that, the actual moves while they're fighting are timed to the music itself. And so what you actually end up with is lots of these repeat shots, you know, where somebody jumps up in the air Well, we get to see them jump up in the air 3 times. You know, like it's
yeah. See, I didn't like that either.
And that gets a little bit. It turns more into a. The problem is that the fight scenes are more like music videos.
Yes.
Right, and
yes.
to a lot of people that's really, really cool, but to a lot of other people it's really annoying.
Yes.
You know, and like, for instance, a lot of when they get into certain fight scenes, the camera is overhead looking down, and it's actually more like ballet. They're choreographed. Like, what's happening is the various different people, as they're fighting in, like they're doing exactly the same movements. So it's like you're watching a ballet. It's very, very interesting the way it's actually done, but it's not for everyone's taste.
Well said.
You know.
Yeah, I didn't really like any of the characters. I didn't really understand who anybody was, because like you said, the story kept changing, and it's like, when you're going to have a movie, we need to have those reliable narratives, unless it's very well established that we have an unreliable narrative. But that takes a certain type of really strong writing to pull off that kind of story. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head where we have an unreliable narrator that's actually a character in the film would be Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. Every time he's telling the origin of his facial scars, it's a different story, and it just establishes that he's not to be trusted, that he's a agent of chaos, you know, that he's just fucking crazy. Whereas in this movie, I'm just like, okay, are you an interior decorator? Are you a spy? Are you just addicted to kung fu, and that's why you happen to be able to be good at fighting off all these people? Are you? What is going on? Who's a mobster? Who's a private eye? I don't know what is going on.
It's for the hour and a half of this movie, you have to actually really watch what's going on, because, as we said, the plot changes every 15 minutes. You know, so the story we start with is not the same story we've got 15 minutes in, is not the same story we've got half an hour in. It changes again 3/4 of an hour in. With an hour in, the story's different again. And so, yeah, it's continually evolving and changing. And so you do actually have to keep, a very close eye, you know, on what's sort of going on. And if you're watching it, by reading the subtitles, because you're watching it in the Chinese and the Japanese that it's originally filmed in, you may find that very hard to follow, I have to admit.
Yes.
In some ways, if you're not, you know, like a Cantonese speaker, because it's in Cantonese, not in Mandarin, Cantonese speaker or Japanese speaker, it's you're sort of tempted to watch, or I'll watch it with the dub, the English dub. But then the problem is, as you're saying, you lose the concept of who's speaking what language.
Exactly.
And also with any movie which is dubbed, you're not getting the true essence of the acting, you know, because it sort of throws itself out, you know, a little bit. So that is a problem with the movie. But, you know, if you're prepared to sit down and watch it, and you really are a big fan of Hong Kong cinema, I think you might quite like it. But then again, it's not going to be to everyone's taste. You know, this is one of those movies, I think you're either going to love it or hate it. You know, you're not...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my thought anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely it's worth checking out, because there is a lot of action in this movie. Like I said, almost too much, but I think it only feels like too much because of that editing style, where they do the triple repeats and the slow-mo and the music video, and it's just like, wait, it just, I don't know, it makes it feel longer than it is, maybe, because it's only it's a standard 2-hour movie, but I don't know, I was just not getting into this movie. I didn't really feel any attachment to any of the characters. I didn't really care about any of the characters. I didn't think the plot made sense. Like, because at first we think this girl's just trying to figure out where her fiance went, and then it turns out her fiance eloped with another woman, but then that woman gets killed in a car wreck, and then you're just like, okay, was he in so deep as a spy, or gangster, whatever the fuck he was? Did he really love this woman? I mean, we don't really ever know. And then all of a sudden, now these people are after the first fiance that got ghosted. And I'm just like, I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Well, we find out it all in the end. Like, it will all come together in the end. We find out exactly who each character really is. We find out why they're all chasing after this fiance. And we get to meet the head of the, or what is it, like the accuser. We get to, because it turns out that it's his wife that the fiance has actually run off and eloped with. So everybody is basically fighting everybody. And what they're chasing, but what they're chasing after, it turns out, is basically a microchip which has the accuser's accounts on it. Like their bookkeeping records.
Okay.
And it turns out that that's what everyone is actually after. The accuser wants it back because, of course, once that gets into the hand of the government, then suddenly the government's going to be able to charge them with crimes. So, of course, they want it back. But, of course, the Japanese government want it so they can charge them with crimes. So, and poor old Macy is basically just caught up in the middle of it all, not knowing, not having any relationship with spies or gangsters or anything like that. She just fell in love with the wrong guy,
right.
Who was using her as a cover, if you like. So we get to find out in the end who everybody is, who is actually a spy, who is a police officer, who is a gangster and all the rest of it. But it takes a while, I have to admit. Yes. It takes a while to find all of that out. Now,
yes, it does.
One complaint that's been made about this movie, especially now, is it's incredibly sexist.
Totally.
Because the thing is that our main character, Tony Leung, he supposedly runs this detective agency. Well, we find out that's not really true. He's actually working for somebody else. But all his employees, all his staff are all women. Right?
Yes.
And so
they're all in love with him.
Oh, they all love him and all. Well, mind you, most people are. I mean, Tony Leung is a huge sex symbol, so that's probably not that hard to believe.
He is a good-looking guy.
Yes,
not gonna lie, he is a good-looking man.
So, but the thing is that there was one argument which is like, well, this is kind of like a mini Charlie's Angels. Like he's Charlie, and all these women that work for him are all sort of like Charlie's Angels. But it's not like that at all. The women are all very capable. They're very smart. They're great fighters. They're intelligent. They're great at their jobs. But he still treats them like sex objects.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He treats them very well. I mean, he pays them well. He gives them he does all of that. But the way he talks to them, is appalling. And the other problem too, that Eric Chen, our interior decorator, who sort of basically turns out to be a bodyguard, he speaks to them in the most appalling ways. One of them, he says, "Oh, with bodies like that, you should do porno." It's like, what?
I remember that.
This is a family film. This is a film meant to be for the family, and you're asking young 20-something women to do porno? Really?
Yeah, this movie was kind of a boys' club because all the action scenes are between the men. The women only ever are damsels in distress, or they have guns, or they drive fast cars to get away. I mean, so I was kind of like, okay, that's what they're doing with this movie. I thought that was kind of disappointing. I thought it was a lot of missed opportunity because I would have loved it if this female fiance that got ghosted actually turned out to be have some kick-ass martial artist skills. But no, damsel in distress the whole movie. Just get out of the way, go hide, scream your head off. I was just like, ugh.
Well, that's the thing, is the women who are good fighters are the ones who work for, our main star Tony Leung. But the problem is that their fight scenes are very short, and they're never treated like they're serious. Like the big fights are all done by the men, not by the women, which is, I thought, was a bit of a shame. I would have liked to have seen the women get into it a little bit more. So, I did think that was a bit of a shame, and yes, rather sexist, but look, it's 18 years old. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna kind of give it a bit of a free pass. But yeah, it is bad on that sense. I must admit, it is bad.
I have seen worse, I will say. I've definitely seen worse. I mean, the action scenes in this really are quite competent. They are entertaining, but unfortunately the style really lost me on a lot of them. I was just like, oh, these camera angles and just repetitive weird shit. And it was just like, oh, why are you guys doing it like that? It's just so distracting. It is distracting.
It is interesting. I think I've said the story before about how my mother hates violence, but there are some Chinese movies where she enjoys the violence because it's choreographed to look like dancing. And this is one movie where my mother actually enjoyed the violence, which is very kind of weird because my daughter insisted, it's like, oh, Nana, you gotta watch this, is my favourite film. You gotta watch this, gotta watch this. And anyway, so she forced my mother to watch it. And I remember talking to her later, and she sort of said, oh, no, it wasn't really violent. They weren't fighting. They were actually dancing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I think that's where it's a bit like, like we sort of say the fight scenes are more like music videos than they are actual fighting. It's not like fighting you would expect in a Bruce Lee film. This is, it's so heavily choreographed, set to music. The timing is so perfect. It does look like they're dancing.
Yeah, no, it is very well choreographed.
Yeah.
Very well. It's just the editing. That editing lost me. I was like, oh, this is so annoying. Why are they doing it like that? This would look so cool if you just let it free flow. Let the action free flow, people. Don't constantly slow it down and pause it and repeat it 3 times with, jump edits and just let it flow. Let them dance.
Yes. Well, I've seen the sequel Soul Raiders, which I have to admit I really did want to see because it stars Su Chi, who is one of my favourite Chinese actresses, and absolutely love her. She's so good. And but it's even worse. To be honest with you, yeah. If you didn't like this film, do not see the sequel. But in saying that, the sequel is very different. It's not stylized the way this movie is. Like, the budget's smaller. The fight scenes are just fight scenes. They're not set to the music the way these ones are. It's not the same sort of blockbuster type concept that this was meant to be. It's just a film. It's just a crime-based film. It's kind of very, very different. So yeah. But I was really hoping you would have liked it a bit more, actually, Velvet. But hey, that's life.
Yeah, and plus, I don't know, this movie kind of lost me when the woman got ghosted by her fiance. That's some traumatic shit. And I was just like, hoping this woman would kick his ass or kill him or something, and she didn't. So.
Although she does, she gets her revenge, though. I mean, she gets her revenge. There's, I think we can definitely say that. But my God, it's a confusing ride along the way. It really is confusing. I mean,
it really. Okay, I thought it was just me. I was like, is this as confusing as I think it is? Okay.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, we've got 1 minute they're trying to find, the fiance, and then halfway through the movie, it turns out that they've got him in prison. They had him in prison all the time. So what?
Oh, gosh.
It gets very, very confusing and hard to follow, I must admit. But but there is something about the style. I mean, also the outfits. They are dressed so beautifully and immaculately throughout this. I mean, it is literally just a fashion show. Their clothes, they're just. It puts James Bond to shame in a sense. They're so well dressed, and a very, very attractive cast. It would have to be said.
Yes,
a very, very attractive cast. So. I think definitely, it was designed a bit more as maybe as a family film or as a younger person's film, like 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds in Hong Kong, a bit of fun, beautiful people. Half the cast are singers. They're not actually just actors, they're singers, you know, so it's a little bit like, you know, you imagine, you know, you cast an action-adventure movie maybe 10 years ago starring Justin Bieber, you know, it's kind of that thing, you know, that feel, or Molly Cyrus, you know. So you've got that type of actors in it, you know, who are sort of like, are they singers or are they actors? You know, well, so what's Molly Cyrus? Is she a singer or is she an actor? Right,
well, she's a singer.
You know, well, yes, a lot of people who have seen her movies,
supposedly,
would say she's a singer, would they? Not an
supposedly.
actor. I don't mind Molly Cyrus. I think she's all right. I mean,
no, she's okay.
Yeah, I mean, she went through that bit of a rebellious
She's just a
period,
wild child. Yeah,
but she's calmed down a lot lately, though, hasn't she?
Yes.
You
yeah,
know?
I think so.
Yeah, I think
so.
She's all right. Everyone's allowed to be a bit
What
wild.
cracked me up is when at one point she shaved her eyebrows and posted a picture on Instagram and everybody flipped out. And I'm like, wow, this is what people are worried about nowadays, whether people have eyebrows or not.
Yeah. Yeah, but people do get kind of... People do get crazy about stupid stuff, though, don't they?
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Didn't they? I was watching the news the other day, and they were talking about, you know, just stuff that's going on at the moment, which I won't bore everybody with. But they were making reference to something that happened a number of years ago, and that was when the news media went nuts because President Obama wore a beige suit. Like it was brown, right? And everyone went nuts. It's like, because of the colour of his suit? I mean, seriously? That's what you're going to be worried about? You're not worried about you're not worried about, you know, Al-Qaeda and stuff like that. You're worried about fucking a brown suit? So people do get pretty crazy, don't they? I mean, you know, about silly stuff. But then that's life, isn't it? That's the fun of life, I suppose. You know.
I forgot all about that.
And where would social media be without all of this stuff? You know, we've got to get outraged about something. So let's get outraged about eyebrows, and let's get outraged about suit colours.
And their hidden meanings.
And their hidden meanings, that's exactly right. What does it mean that he wore a brown suit? There must be some hidden meaning. Oh, dear.
Amazing.
Yeah. What's happened to Molly Cyrus's eyebrows? What was the meaning? Is she in a cult? Is she in a cult?
Maybe she just wanted to draw them on, and all that hair was in the way.
Yes.
It was impeding on her artistic expression of her eyebrows to have hair there.
Oh, dearie me. Dearie me. So it's
all right. Whew.
Have we got a lot else to say about Tokyo Raiders?
I personally do not.
Okay. Well, it's I think this is one where Velvet and I are going to disagree.
I think.
Yes, you know, on this movie. I mean, I loved it. Velvet, obviously, not a huge fan.
No,
but maybe I enjoy this movie more because of the family connection that it has.
Right,
so,
that's understandable.
So the movie has sort of memories. You know, it's a bit like you know, certain smells or certain sights, you know, bring back memories and, you know, and all this sort of thing. So, you know, in that sense, I think maybe this movie brings that back to me, and maybe I love it more because of that rather than what the movie actually is. I don't know.
I mean, we all have movies that we love because of sentiment, because of sentimental factors, and there's nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, I don't share that sentiment, so I'm going to be pretty cruel in my rating of this film.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you look. I mean, you look at me. I mean, I'm a huge fan of. Well, we all know how much I love Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, right?
Yeah.
But I'll freely admit that from a purely movie perspective, the 1980s film is not that good. Right?
Oh, it's amazing.
I love it. I mean, I absolutely love it. Don't get me wrong. You know, and also the fact that, you know, when they made the TV series in 2000, I mean, seriously, Sheena has a California accent and silicon-enhanced boobs. probably not realistic for a jungle woman, you know.
No, those they weren't silicone; they were coconut oil.
Oh, coconut oil, right? Okay,
coconut oil.
So
they were all natural.
So the thing is that I can love stuff, but still realise it's got some technical problems, you know. But I can still absolutely adore it, and I think that's probably more the way I feel about this film. You know, technical issues, but hey, still adore it.
Right on.
All right. So,
that being
ratings.
Said, on a scale of 1 to 5, Eric Roberts, I honestly did not enjoy this film. I found it, for some reason, I found it really boring. I just couldn't get past the whole being ghosted by the fiance thing. That really disturbed me. And so, long story short, out of a possible 5 Eric Roberts, I'm going to give this 2 because of the action sequences.
Okay. I'm actually going to give this 5.
I don't think we've ever had that strong of a divide.
That much of a divide. When we did Sheena, I think you gave it 4 or something, 4.5 or something, and I gave
it like 5 million.
But I gave it 5 million, so that was kind of a divide, you know. But you know, 5 million was probably a reasonable divide. It's no, look, I loved it. I actually really enjoyed the fight scenes. I love the way it was choreographed to music, and yeah, the story's difficult to follow, but if you sit down and really watch it, it's not that hard to follow. You just got to pay attention all the time. And the problem is if you're
all the time.
Well, that's the problem. If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to pay attention, and that's the problem. Not a film that you can just sort of walk out, make a cup of tea, and come back. You're going to lose so much because the story changes every 5 fucking seconds, you know. So,
if you guys in America would like to see this film, it is readily available on Amazon Prime for free. So type in Tokyo Raiders and just sit back and have fun. Yes. Enjoy it for what it is.
Well, it is just meant to be that. It's meant to be a fun movie. It's not meant to be anything more. Just a bit of a fun flick. So
right. If you've just gone through a bad breakup or if you've been ghosted by your fiance, do not watch this movie. You will not like it.
Probably not. But then remember, hey, revenge does come eventually. So
it's a dish best served cold.
Yes.
As they say.
And very cold because they're in the middle of the Tokyo. I don't know what that river is in the middle of Tokyo. You know, the one that runs through.
Oh, yeah. That was actually pretty wild. Like I said, the action was pretty wild with all the cars and the boat chases. And yeah,
well, it's not just
definitely worth checking out.
It was filmed it was filmed in the middle of winter. Right, and so that water would have been pretty cold in Tokyo. I mean, yeah. Oh yeah. All right, and that's because what we're referring to is the movie ends with a giant boat chase through the middle of Tokyo with boats and jet skis and all sorts of things. So as we said, it's a full-on action adventure Chinese style. So. All right. Well, that's probably it for that one. So we'll take another quick break. Actually, just in saying that, I actually saw a movie. I can't remember now what it's called. It was actually a few weeks ago, and it was another Chinese action adventure. But this was not a Hong Kong movie. It was like mainland China. So it was all filmed in Mandarin, and it was kind of like an Arnie adventure or a Rambo-style movie. And it was very, very interesting to watch because I'd never seen a Chinese... You know how we did a lot of American movies which are sort of like... they literally end with someone with a machine gun in one hand and a flag in the other. You know, it's like, God bless America, bang, 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 bang. You know, all this sort of stuff, right? What would I describe? A Michael Bay film, right? You know, that sort of that style. But I've never seen a Chinese film which had been like that. And I saw this, and it was friggin' identical. It was for love of motherland, love of our country. It was and it was kind of really disappointing because I sort of thought one of the things I liked about Chinese cinema is they didn't do that. They didn't go down that Michael Bay path, and Well, clearly they are now, which was kind of a bit disappointing.
That's wild.
You know,
my goodness.
well, I mean,
Wow.
the movie finishes off where they save all these refugees. It's set in Africa, and so this Chinese ex special forces guy. So he saves all of these refugees, and they're driving down to the docks to meet up with the Chinese Navy to escape. And anyway, they've got to get through all the rebels who were there shooting, killing everybody.
Oh my God.
They're in the trucks, and so they throw their guns over the side of the trucks, and he grabs a Chinese flag, and he straps it to this is no joke, right? And he straps it to his arm, and he holds his arm up in the air and sits on the top of the truck, and the martial music starts playing, and they drive through the rebels as he's flying the Chinese flag, and all the rebels go, "Oh, they're Chinese, they're great people, let them pass." It was just, I mean, seriously.
That's amazing.
I
Wow.
seriously reckon Michael Bay had a secret role in directing this movie. It was just unbelievable to watch.
Oh, that really does sound like something straight out of 1980s Americana action films.
I know.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
It was just absolutely hilarious to watch until you suddenly realise that, oh, holy shit, that's what kind of half of the American action adventures are like anyway. So it was kind of really interesting to see that style shot from another country.
But I'm sure for us citizens of that country, that's actually really fun to watch, though. As cheesy and as stupid as it sounds when you explain it to citizens of other nations, those kind of movies are a lot of fun to watch. And they make you feel this weird sense of pride about your country. And you're like, this is so ridiculous. This guy killed like 1 million people in this movie, but now he's a hero because he's waving a flag.
But it is interesting, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, the vast majority of these sorts of, patriotic movies, I mean, I've seen a few Russian ones, I have to admit, and of course, most of the ones seem to come out of Hollywood. But to see one out of China was really, really interesting. And
that is surprising.
But it's interesting. You know how you sort of made the comment. It's like they're fun and they sort of give you that bit of pride and all the rest of it. But the thing everyone forgets is the world's not American, or the world's not Chinese, or the world's not Russian. And so, what does everybody else think who's not one of those? Who's not part of that country?
Right, and people who make those films are not thinking about other countries.
They're for domestic consumption, and and then
definitely,
So it's very so. What I was going to actually say to a lot of people is, if you're American and you love those sorts of movies, watch this. We'll have to post what the name of it is. I can't remember now, but it's readily available on Netflix, and watch it and see if you feel the same way about it as you do about the American movies you love, right?
Okay,
because I think because if it's identical in that style of shooting, so it'd be really interesting. Like, if you love the American ones, do you love the Chinese one? Because if you don't love the Chinese one, does that mean that it's not the style of filmmaking you love, it's the patriotism you love? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a really interesting concept. I'd be fascinated to hear what a lot of people think about that. But anyway, we are really digressing from the point. So, we will take a quick musical break and we will be right back. And I thought, seeing we did Tokyo Raiders, and of course one of the stars is Kelly Chen, let's hear a bit of Kelly Chen.
Woohoo!
Yes, and we are back, and that was, of course, Kelly Chen singing live, and yes, maybe not to everyone's taste, but hey, I'm quite partial to a bit of Chinese pop myself, I must admit. So there you go. Now, our next or final film for the episode is. I can't believe we're doing this, but we had to get to it eventually, didn't we?
Definitely.
We are doing the Ed Wood Jr. classic, Glen or Glenda. Yes, it had to happen eventually. It had to happen. I mean, we've done Plan 9 from Outer Space, haven't we? We did do that.
We have not done it yet. We
Haven't
not
we
done it yet.
Oh,
That was
God.
before I was on board, so you and I have not reviewed it together yet.
Maybe we should revisit that then at some stage.
Definitely.
Actually, we might have. Oh, I can't remember. Did we do Robot? Oh no, we didn't do Robot Monster.
But that was before my time.
Yes,
You did that with Cliff from Only Funny to Us.
Pardon me. Oh, yes, I think that was with Cliff. That's right. Yes. So, anyway. So, Glen or Glenda. Now, a lot of people love this film because they know all about it because they're huge fans of Ed Wood. And other people have never heard of it. Some people think it is one of the worst films ever made. I tend to be in the latter category. It is, as much as I love Ed Wood, this is not a good film. It is.
No, it's pretty bad.
It is incredibly cheap, and it is a personal message, really, in a sense, by Ed Wood. Now, what is the story about? Well, it starts off with Bela Lugosi, who, of course, would appear in a number of Ed Wood movies, trying to, I suppose, revive his career to a degree,
Yes.
after playing, Count Dracula for quite a long time. And but his role in the film really has nothing to do with the film.
No, not at all.
He plays some sort of scientist, or I don't know what he's meant to be. And he just starts talking about random scientific and biological things and theories that don't really have anything, in a sense, to do with the movie. But, of course, he does get to say the famous line, "Pull the string! Pull the string!"
What the hell does that
Still
even
have
mean?
absolutely no idea what it has to do with anything. But anyway, it has gone down in cinema history as
He says, pull the string, and then buffaloes start running, and you're like, what?
I know. Sorry, I'm just going to have to mute myself for a second, guys. Just one second.
No problem. Okay, so Glen or Glenda, this movie is from 1953, and it has a very short running time of only an hour and 5 minutes. And this movie is actually quite groundbreaking for the time, because this movie discusses two topics in one film that were not readily discussed in 1950s America. That would be transvestism as well as transgenderism. And he talks about both of these topics in one film with, I want to say, graphic footage of men wearing female clothing and men living as women, which was hugely taboo at the time. And I believe up until possibly the 70s, maybe 60s, up until the 70s in the United States, men who dressed as women could be arrested and did have extensive criminal records for dressing as the opposite sex in America. So this was huge that they made this movie when they did in 1953. And I'll hand it back over to Warren because he does the summaries best.
I'm back in the land of the living. Sorry, this.
No problem. You're fine.
I'm still very ill, unfortunately, but
you're doing fine.
And I do pardon my voice. It's probably very, very bad at the moment, but
no, you sound good. You sound good.
I do apologise for that. So basically, our story starts with a police detective who walks in on, or is called to, a suicide where they find a man who, dressed as a woman, has basically taken his own life and leaves a suicide note about, obviously, the issues that he has had. Well, I don't know. Is it actually she? Do you actually... I must admit, I get a little bit confused about all of this, about when you do say she or you say he. Are you on top of that, Velvet, or?
Oh, in his case, I do believe he would want to be recognized as she, and that's part of the reason that she committed suicide. But
okay.
We'll just throw our disclaimer out there really quick. Sometimes Warren and I are going to slip up on our pronouns. It is not our intention to offend. We are sensitive to this. We are open-minded and accepting of all gender creeds and beliefs. And this movie, even though we're going to make fun of the movie, we're not making fun of people's gender orientation. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, no, not in any means. So if I get some words wrong, or if I describe something where it's not the correct term to use or something like that, I apologize up front. I'm not really involved in that community as such. So I just apologize, but I totally support the community. All right. So I just want to say that. So
I agree.
Anyway,
so we have our disclaimer out of the way.
Okay,
so we will be making fun of the movie, but we're not making fun of the actual people that identify as a different gender or choose to dress opposite of what society says they should wear.
Correct. So absolutely correct. Yeah. So anyway, so she then is found basically by the detective. And anyway, so afterwards, the detective, and in fact, I think the line that's actually on the suicide note is, "Let my body rest in death forever in the things I cannot wear in life," which is a very, very interesting statement.
Yes.
Now, our police detective then goes to see a psychiatrist, because he wants to find out more about the whole idea of cross-dressing and was it transsexuality, transgender, and so forth. And so anyway, so he goes to see the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist then tells him the story of a person he knew who was called Glen, but who liked, of course, or wanted to be known as Glenda. Okay? So, and of course, that person is played by Ed Wood himself. Because, of course, Ed Wood himself was actually... God, was he transsexual or was he a cross-dresser? I don't...
So, in Ed Wood's case, he is the impolite term would be transvestite. This is a man that just enjoyed wearing women's clothing because it made him feel pretty and feminine.
Yes.
However, he was not homosexual and he did not want to be a woman.
No. He didn't want to have any surgical thing. He still was a man. He still identified as a man, but he enjoyed wearing women's clothing. That's correct, isn't it? Yes, I think that's right. I hope I'm right.
You've got it. You've got it.
Okay,
got
right.
It.
Okay.
Sorry, my dog was over here barking.
Oh no! That's no.
Whereas
whereas our suicide victim is different. They wanted to live as a woman, not as okay. Yeah. So there's some slight differences. So the idea was meant to show the different. Not everyone's the same. Not everyone, is the same. There are different, differences between them. So that's what they're trying to show. So anyway, we then basically get to see via narration, and most of it's actually by narration. Actually, there's probably more narration than actual lines in this. We get to see the life of Glen and Glenda. And how it basically affects his marriage, because he is married, and then he basically will not come out in the gay sense, but come out with obviously what his life is to his wife, but his wife, of course, can't really accept it. So it's this story, but intertwined with all of this, which is what. See, the thing about it is that although it's a cheap story, I can actually see this movie in a sense as being kind of quite, although it's cheap and badly acted, it's kind of got a really serious message it's trying to portray, but then it's destroyed all the time by the appearances of Bela Lugosi for absolutely no reason. Other than the fact that they wanted to put Bela Lugosi up on the, starring Bela Lugosi, and he keeps popping up all the time, ranting and raving about all these things that I just... You know,
it's so
yeah.
bizarre. It's like it starts out like so serious, and it almost seems like it's almost like one of those 50s educational films where, you know, they're going to teach you what happens if you don't wait for sex before marriage and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, all of a sudden Bela Lugosi just appears and he's talking about some weird shit. And this movie's only an hour and 5 minutes, and there is 14 minutes of stock footage. You got pedestrians running around. You've got the milkman. You've got an ambulance driving by. You've got lightning. My favorite were the buffalo that are running around. I mean, just it goes on and on and on. Oh my God, the natives was the worst one. Just like people in blackface, black body that are supposed to be some kind of, I guess, African tribe, and obviously they're just not, and they're kind of like jumping up and down. They're supposed to be dancing and doing some kind of tribal dance. It's like none of this shit has anything to do with a movie, but it's also just all of a sudden randomly there.
But it's also kind of crazy, Velvet, because it's like he's trying to make people aware, okay, of you know, transsexuality and all this sort of stuff. So what does he do in the middle of it? He makes an incredibly racist statement. Like he wants people to accept, you know, something, and then one of the ways he does it is by condemning somebody else. It's like. You know, it's like someone sort of saying, I want you to accept me for this, while I simultaneously condemn you for being that. And it's like that was the bit I didn't get. You know, and when they do this concept of natives, I thought that was appalling, actually. But
yeah, that was really bad.
You know,
that was really bad.
It's like, you know, I want you to accept my lifestyle, but I'll still be racist while I do it.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. Oh, God.
Absolutely. Anyway. No, the pacing in the beginning of the movie is really slow. Like, it's interesting, but it is slow. And you're just kind of like, okay, is anything going to happen? But then it really gets into the story, and you're just like, okay, because I mean, it really is highly educational for anybody that's kind of like, I don't know about this whole transgender or transvestite thing. And they make a huge emphasis in the film that, well, if you subscribe to any of these lifestyles or orientations, it does not mean that you are homosexual. So I thought it was interesting that they also made that distinction that, you know, you do not have to be homosexual to want to live as the opposite gender or to dress as the opposite gender. So I thought that was actually really forward thinking, that because back then that a lot of times that was just kind of like, oh, you must be gay. Well, like, no, you don't know anything about me.
But there has always been that sort of belief, hasn't there, through society that for, especially, you know, for men who do want to dress as women, that they suddenly must be homosexual when they're not at all. They're comfortable and identify in female clothing, but they're still attracted to women. They're not attracted to men by any means.
Right.
You know, so he did make a very good point of trying to push that out. And in a sense, that was pretty advanced for 1953. I mean, that is pretty, I mean, that's just not ahead of its time. It's generations ahead of its time.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a very forward-thinking film for how badly made it is, because just all this random stock footage and Bela Lugosi doing these crazy, nonsensical monologues. But the film is still relevant today, that's a hard feat to pull off, especially for a film from 1953 when there was still a lot of racial as well as gender inequality happening. And for a film like this to still be relevant for the most part and still be able to get its message across is pretty amazing, especially coming from a director who is considered to be one of the worst directors of all time.
Yes.
That he actually made a film with a message.
But it is interesting how obviously things have changed. I mean, you know, we look at movies like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, for argument's sake, right? And we talk about, it's often talked about how that's such a groundbreaking movie. But is it? You know, I mean, this was made in 1953. It may not have had the budget and the acting and the scripts of Priscilla, but, you know, this is 30 years before Priscilla. You know,
and I was honestly surprised that this movie, they estimate this movie had a budget of $20,000. I'm not sure if that's $20,000 in 1953 dollars or if that's what would be the equivalent of today. That I'm not sure about, unfortunately. But the fact that this had any kind of budget at all is kind of amazing. But then on top of that, this movie was also made in only 4 days.
Yes.
So for a 4-day film to still be watched and talked about today, that's also quite amazing.
Well, I think the other thing too is that we watch it now and we don't watch it as we're shocked. We watch it and laugh because it's so cheap and badly made. But the actual subject that they talk about, I don't think we watch now and go, oh, that's weird, or that's crazy, or well, some people.
No, we're not shocked by it.
There are still some very non-progressive people in the world, but for us normal people who want to allow people to live the lives they want, it's like we don't watch this and go, the subject matter's weird. We actually just go, the movie's weird. It's not the subject matter, you know. I mean, I can remember. A few years ago, I was watching, the Graham Norton show out of Britain, the interview of Graham Norton. And he had Anna Kournikova, the Russian...
Yes, the tennis player.
And she was talking on there about how her husband, one of the things that she hated was her husband kept stealing her underwear because her husband liked to wear women's underwear. He didn't... like to wear men's underwear. Yeah. And remember too, her husband, I think, was a Russian boxer or something too. He was kind of, God,
I can't believe she said that.
And she actually talked about how he liked to wear her underwear all the time. And so he would actually, but she said her biggest problem was she wouldn't mind so much if he went out and bought his own, but she used to steal hers.
My God.
So the thing is that it's not, all this sort of stuff is not that, it's not that taboo anymore. It's kind of, if you can talk about it on Graham Norton, it's not really that taboo.
Are they still married, or did he get pissed off and divorced?
Actually, I don't actually know if they are still married, to be honest. But I don't think it's about that. That's.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, there was a lot of really awkward sexuality in this film, and I'm not saying, and I don't mean in regards to our transvestite or transgender characters. There evidently, the actual company that produced this film thought they need to spice it up, so they interspliced all these weird softcore scenes. You have like a girl laying on the couch getting all horny, just like rubbing all over herself, and I guess it was supposed to be like a nightmare sequence or something. It was just bizarre. And then there was like this girl-on-girl bondage scene, and like they keep showing like Bela Lugosi's reaction shots to the girl-on-girl bondage scene. And then there's even like this really awkward softcore erotica scene, and there's this basically softcore rape scene that's just like, oh, okay, this is getting really awkward. This woman's on the couch, this guy comes over and she's trying to fight him off, and he's trying to basically rape her. But there was that weird standard in the 50s films where women were supposed to fight men instead of just, consensually having sex with them, and it's just like, oh my God. And then there's all these weird random ghostly people, and then the devil shows up at a wedding as a witness.
Devil! I forgot about the devil pops up. That's right, the bloody devil pops up.
And I'm not sure what was going on. It just gets really weird all of a sudden. And you're like, wait, I was learning about all the stuff I might not know about. And now there's just weird things happening, and there's buffaloes running, and there's, stock footage of a steel factory, and there's a large explosion. And I'm like, wow, okay, what happened to this movie? It just derailed all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's... you kind of get the point he's trying to make, which is that the steel worker might be wearing women's underwear under his overalls, or and when somebody goes home, if they want to wear a dress, well, they're not hurting anybody, they're not doing anything wrong. It's their life, they should be allowed to do what they want. So I totally get what he's trying to say, but but it's just the way it's put together and made is so bad.
Yes.
And the way that he's trying to, like, he tries to justify it almost with science. I think this is where all the animals and stuff come into it. And it's like, there's no need to justify it. It just is what it is. It doesn't need justification. You know, it's like
right.
It's about human rights. It's not about biology. You know, and he's trying to almost, like, he goes down this route of almost like, he's not trying to say it's okay because of, it's just a human right to be able to be who you want to be, or to, you know, to act the way you feel that you have been born or misborn or whatever. He goes down it by trying to give it some sort of scientific background, which is like, I just don't think that that's going to achieve anything.
No, I don't think so either. They do have an interesting psychoanalysis that I'm pretty sure by today's standards is pretty outdated analysis.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the vocabulary. Oops, sorry about that. Sorry, and my dog agrees.
Ah, yes, yeah. It gets emotions going.
As I was saying, there is the term that they used was pseudo-hermaphrodite. I'm not sure if this is something that's still in common vocabulary within the psychoanalytical fields. And I was kind of like, pseudo-hermaphrodite. Interesting.
How do you be a pseudo? I thought, I mean, obviously some people are born hermaphrodites. Okay,
right,
that's a
exactly.
biological thing. But
Exactly.
but generally these days, what happens is that surgery is carried out on the newborn child. The parents
Right.
decide what sex the child is going to be.
Right.
But it's or I should probably say the parents decide what sex biologically they're going to be. They may not decide
Right.
emotionally what sex the child
Right.
will grow up to be. But but pseudo, I've never heard the word pseudo. Pseudo
Yeah.
kind of means it's not real. I don't get that.
Exactly. So what they were trying to say in this film is basically that people who are transgender, they, as we often hear, the common phrase is, you feel like you're in the wrong body. You're a man, you feel like you're in you're a man, but you're in a female body, etc. So they're trying to say that you have both, but you really don't. So pseudo.
Right. Yeah.
So they're acting like you have that physical dilemma of actually being a hermaphrodite, but you don't. Not physically, anyways.
Well, that's, I mean, but
Yeah.
that's the thing. But there are different, like, styles. Styles
Right.
not the right word.
I know what you're saying. Intersex, for
Because
example.
because there are
exactly.
some, like for instance, there are some women who want to dress like men, but it doesn't
Yes.
mean that they want to be a man. They just want to dress like
Right.
a man. There are some
Right.
men that want to dress like women. Doesn't mean that they
Right.
want to be a woman. But then there are different elements. Like there are men who still dress like men. They want to be men, but they might just want to wear women's underwear under what they wear. Right. So it's sort of like there's all sorts of different things. It's just, in some ways, I sort of thought he was just trying to make it too simplistic. I don't know. But maybe trying to dissect this movie is just wrong. You shouldn't dissect it. It is just what it is. And he was trying to achieve something in 1953 that was probably very, very difficult to do. And he probably just did the best he could at the time.
Exactly. With the budget that he had, which was probably a shoestring budget for that time.
Yeah.
But it's something you got to see once, because it starts out so educational and then it just turns into what the fuck. And you're like, wow, this is just weird.
Well, so I'll tell you a story. I used to work for a company many years ago, and what a company that we used to do a lot of business with was called, I forgot what it was called, was Femart or Femtech. Femtech. I think that's what it was called, Femtech. And what it was it was actually a technology company, did IT and all this sort of stuff, but it did it exclusively for people of transgender. So the idea was that if somebody came to your house to do technical work, set up computers, routers, networking of houses, all wireless, all this sort of stuff. The thing was that if you were a man, you could treat greet the technician wearing a dress, and there would be no judgment made, right? So it was actually designed so people could, deal with tradespeople who weren't going to condemn them. You know what I mean? They could still. So it was a very, very good idea. But the really thing that it threw me at first, and I shouldn't laugh, but it threw me at first, was the very first time I spoke to them. I was put onto this representative called Jenny. And so I sort of said, right, can I speak to Jenny? And they put me through. And the person on the other end of the phone, it was like, g'day, this is Jenny. And it was like the gruffiest male voice you've ever heard. It just
blows your perception. Whether we mean to or not, certain names elicit a certain image. And, I feel you on that one.
But the thing was that Jenny, she was an incredibly nice person, Nice. But the thing was that Jenny was actually a man, So it did throw me, I have to admit, at first, you had that kind of little giggle, at first. But then you very quickly realise, no, it's just actually what this company is doing is actually really, really nice. I mean, they're helping people,
cool. That is cool. Yeah.
They've found something and they're making money out of it, but at the same time, they're helping people who need help, So it's, just an interesting story.
That is cool. There is a great scene in Glen or Glenda that really calls people out on that, of us trying to be more open-minded and not so quick to judge, and to learn the appropriate behavior around people who are different from the way we live our lives. And there's that great scene where they show the man in a full-on beard, chest hair, and a V-neck dress, and you have to laugh because it looks comical. And our narrator goes, "You're laughing, aren't you?" And you're like, "Yep, yeah, you caught me. Yeah. I'm being insensitive. I'm not being open-minded. You're right." So, but it's very well timed. It's very, it's the first time you watch the movie, it gets you. You're like, "Oh, shit, yeah, I am being an insensitive asshole. You're right."
Well, but I can still remember too going to a festival in Melbourne, which was in I always get this wrong. LG. Oh, what is it?
LGBT.
Yes. Or Q now, isn't it? Q on the end.
Yeah,
at the
now
moment
they do
too?
that Q a lot of times too. Yeah.
I believe the Q is meant to be for like
questioning.
Millennials. Yeah, just questioning. It's meant
Still
to be that.
Figuring it out.
And anyway, we went to a festival which was held in Melbourne, and we were there, and it was great fun, great food, and and everyone was just there being themselves, sort of thing, which was great. So that whole community was there, but obviously still just other people as well. Like I was there with my partner. And then we were there, and it was great. Anyway, they had a big dance floor set up, and you could dance. They were playing music, right? And there were all these, and it was just amazing to see. There were guys with beards wearing dresses, dancing with their partner, who was, it was very, very interesting to watch. And anyway, so it was a bit like, oh, let's have a dance, And I hate dancing. I just hate it, right? Anyway. So I go up there and it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then this guy, right, in this, in a dress with a beard, big guy. And he goes, "May I cut in?" And I sort of said, "Yeah, go for it. No worries at all." So here's this guy dancing with my partner with his big beard in the dress.
Oh, I thought he wanted to dance with you.
No, he wanted to dance with her. And
either way, it's cool. It's all good fun.
I would have danced with him / her. It wouldn't have worried me. Wouldn't have worried me at all. I mean, he's not asking to take me to bed. I mean, he's asking to dance. You know what I mean? So it wouldn't have worried me in the slightest. But it was really fun to watch him. It was actually really, really fun. So yeah,
that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, this movie, like I said, the movie was very open-minded. Obviously, it does have some of those 50s sexism of the time, because when they're discussing our transgender character, they say that, oh, he's effeminate and he's a pseudo-hermaphrodite, and they're saying he liked girl sports and he liked women's work, and I'm like, wait, what's girl sports? What is women work? What the fuck? Like, so remember, movies from the 1950s, there's going to be shit like that in there, because that was just the zeitgeist of the time that this movie was made.
It is
in America.
It is unfortunately we're being sort of having this explanation about how this is okay, but at the same time, we're still going to be racist and we're still going to be sexist.
Yes,
but
yes.
yeah.
Yes, big time.
That's...
Oh my God, it cracks me up though, because they're like, if you read some of the summaries of this film, it says stuff like the second part of the film, because they wanted to have like, a sex change film basically, and our character was Alan, and it says here, Alan is a pseudo-hermaphrodite who fights in World War II wearing women's underwear.
Yes.
Like, wait, what?
That's right, because he served in World War II wearing women's underwear.
Just the way they explained it, you're like, oh, okay, okay, I guess, all right. And they're like, and after his return, Alan actually undergoes surgery in this movie to become a woman. And around the time this movie was made, a year prior, they did actually have the first publicly recognized sex change operation in Sweden, I believe. Kristen Jorgensen became a woman.
Was it Sweden or Switzerland?
I was thinking Sweden. I could be wrong. I thought it was Sweden.
No, you're probably right.
To me, it sounds like
To
me, it sounds like something they would do in Sweden. I have to admit, just because they've always been kind of like, oh, we don't care what you do.
Well, they've generally been a much more progressive society than Scandinavia.
Exactly.
There's no doubt about that.
Exactly.
And
I don't know how true this is, but supposedly the producer of this film, George Weiss, actually tried to make offers to Christine Jorgensen. Her last name's even Swedish. I'm just now noticing that. Okay, anyways. Actually tried to get Christine Jorgensen to appear in this film, and she turned him down. I don't know how true that is. That might just be speculation or hype for the movie, but supposedly they really did try to get her on board. Like, hey, you want to play yourself in this movie? I think she made the wise decision by saying no.
I think so too, yes. Yes. I definitely think so. You know, she wasn't there ready for pulls his string.
And then a herd of buffalo take off running.
Yes.
And you're like, what the fuck?
I still want to know.
And then there's an explosion at a steel factory, and then there's girls in fuzzy hats, and you're like, what is going on?
I still want to know what pull the string means.
I don't know. And they do the whole fucking nursery rhyme, puppy dog tails, sugar and spice, and everything nice, puppy dog tails. And I'm like, oh my God. Why are you doing a baby rhyme? What? Baby rhyme nursery.
I kind of get that to a degree. I think he's trying to do this idea of how children are brought up. Like, they're brought up to be male or female, and maybe we should be a bit more gender neutral and let the children decide for themselves where they're going to, to be. Maybe that's what he's trying to say. I don't know.
That's a good interpretation. So, more about Bela Lugosi. I mean, at the time, he was very severely addicted to drugs. I believe he was a heroin addict.
Was it heroin or morphine?
Excuse me, I think it was morphine. I apologize.
Yeah. Oh no, you might be right. It may well have been.
He was injecting something. I'll just say that, because I'm not really too privy to those drugs myself, so I might get them wrong. And he was broke as a joke, no money. So becoming friends with Ed Wood was a dream come true for both of them, because now it put a couple of bucks in his pocket, but. Bela Lugosi probably didn't get paid very much to be in any of Ed Wood's movies.
Well, I don't think anybody did. I don't think anybody did. And I'd highly recommend that, if you've got an interest in the life of Ed Wood, to watch the movie Ed Wood.
Which is actually great. I really love that movie, actually.
Yeah. Which is a very interesting sort of... look at his life. It goes through a number of the movies. It also goes through, the transsexuality as well, or transgender. Not transsexuality, transgender. I've got to try to get these terms right. I'm so sorry. Of him, the fact that, we will often see him directing, wearing women's clothes, and wearing a wig. It's beautifully played by Johnny Depp, and some other great actors in it, as well. It's a very, very fascinating film. There's a couple of things that are put in there for shall we say, cinematic license that didn't really happen.
Yes.
He did not meet Orson Welles in a coffee shop. That has been added in for political license or cinematic license. But it is a really, really good film. Really recommend anyone to watch it if they're interested in his life. And it's a very serious film, but it's very funny at the same time.
Yes.
Bill Murray is another one of the stars who's in it. It's a very good film.
It really is. And Martin Landau, who plays Bela Lugosi in this movie, his performance is flawless. And he did actually win awards for his portrayal of Bela Lugosi in this film. It was so spot on. It was really like watching Bela Lugosi. And I mean, they did prosthetics and he perfected the Hungarian accent. And it was just, wow. You're making me want to watch it again. Like, actually wanted to watch it again after watching Glen or Glenda, because it reminds you so much of this film, Ed Wood. And it's I mean, the movie itself is about friendship, which is, so great, because I feel like so many movies nowadays don't have that as a central theme. Even though you'll have like these buddy movies, there's always an underlying plot about something else. But this movie, for me, the central theme is actually friendship, and I think that's just a great movie. And of course, acceptance, and
Well, in the movie Ed Wood, as we're saying, the movie basically says that everyone, like his friends, basically accepted him, like for for who he was. And although his first wife obviously didn't, she rejected it. And it's in fact his first wife that's in this movie. She actually plays his wife in the movie, and that's his first wife in real life. They would, of course, get divorced because of this. And, of course, he would then meet another young actress, and they were married, and she had no problem with it, at all. His friends didn't, at least from what I can gather. And apparently also Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood were... I don't know enough about the subject, but definitely from the film, it leads you to believe that they were actually very close friends. They actually cared about each other a great deal.
Yes. Yeah, I got the impression that they were actually friends. And I also love in the movie, and I don't know how true this is, that Ed Wood would just come out on set in full drag, in full cross-dressing, and
that is true. Apparently, that is apparently that is true. Yeah. Because that's how he was comfortable. He was most comfortable in women's clothes.
I need to watch that movie again.
And so yes, he would be on set directing, and he'd be in his he'd be wearing a skirt and wearing a wig. Yes,
amazing.
Apparently, an amazing man. It must be said. Quite an amazing.
And I'm not laughing honestly because I think it's funny. I love that he was just like, you know what, this is what I do, and I'm going to do it. and he does it in the movie, and somebody shows up and they're offended, like, what are you doing? You can't wear that. Da, 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 da. And he's just running away, like, oh, these people are trying to control my life. And I'm just like, wow.
It's
wow.
No, it's a brilliant film, actually. Unlike Glen or Glenda, the movie Ed Wood is an amazing piece of cinematography. And even if you don't want to see Glen and Glenda, I do recommend you see Ed Wood if you haven't seen it. And Bill Murray does have some hilarious lines in it, I have to admit, too. When he's talking about the relationship between Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, because the two... one thing I didn't realise, the two men hated each other. Apparently absolutely hated each other. And, of course, Boris Karloff was most famous, of course, for playing Frankenstein's monster, where, of course, Bela Lugosi was famous for playing Count Dracula. And apparently they hated each other, and there's a great scene in the movie where they're at, I think they're meant to be at Bela Lugosi's funeral, and they bring in the man who would actually play Bela Lugosi in Plan 9 from Outer Space for most of it, which was actually the dentist of Ed Wood's wife.
Oh my goodness.
Who they reckon looked a lot like Bela Lugosi. That's why he's got his face covered all the time. And he comes out and they said, oh God, he really does look like Bela Lugosi. And then Bill Murray makes the great line. He says, yeah, but does he sound like him? Wait until he, what is it? Wait until you hear him call Boris Karloff a cocksucker.
It's a great movie. That's one. Maybe we'll have to do that for Halloween this year, just because it's such a great movie. And I don't know. It's just wow. Anyways.
So anyway, Glen and Glenda. Getting back to Glen and Glenda.
Glen or Glenda.
Have we got anything else we need to sort of sum up with it, or?
I think we've pretty much said it. It's really just such a strange movie. It's a bad movie. It's not so bad, it's good. But at the same time, for me, it falls in that category of, yeah, this is a bad movie, but you kind of have to see it one time.
Yeah.
One of those kind of movies, because it's just so bizarre. Again, it's really super duper short, an hour and 5 minutes. 14 minutes of that is stock footage. It's just
pretty typical of Ed Wood. I mean, put as much stock footage in as you can.
Yes. Pad that film, save on costs. We're working on a shoestring budget here. You can actually see this movie on Amazon Prime. If you have an Amazon Prime membership, Amazon Prime, you can actually, there's a colorized version. This is a black and white film originally. There's a colorized version that you can watch. And I actually watched the colorized version because I'd seen the black and white one before. And I was like, oh, this will be fun to see in color. And yeah, it did not disappoint. It made it actually a little more bizarre seeing it in color, especially when the devil character comes around and you realize his horns are actually like his eyebrows. Like his eyebrows are so long and high, they shoot up past his head and look like horns. It's bizarre. Yeah. It's just crazy.
I mean, I always say to people that the only way to watch a movie that was filmed in black and white is colorized, I always say change the settings and take it back to mono. So it goes back to black and white, because I don't like it myself. I just think if it's shot in black and white, because the other thing too, cinema. We've said this before, we've discussed this before, so I won't go on about it. But just very quickly, a movie that's shot in black and white, the cinematography, the actual camera styles is different to if you shoot in color. So if you colorize it, you lose all the effect that they created. So just don't. Take it back to mono, because you lose. Now, in a cheap movie like this, it probably doesn't matter so much. But if
in this one, I don't think it matters.
No, but in other movies, don't do it. Go back to mono and watch it the way the filmmakers intended it to be. Yeah, because it. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, so are we ready to rate this?
Yes, go for it, Velvet.
Okay, again, it's bad, but you got to see it. I am entertained by this because there is. It's very educational, but then it just gets so fucking weird. And okay, so I have a possible 5 Eric Roberts. I'm gonna go ahead and give this 3 Erics. Look at me, I'm 1, 2, 3 tonight.
1, 2, 3.
Give this 3 Eric Roberts.
How am I going to rate this? Look, it's an Ed Wood film, so seriously, I don't reckon it's worth any more than a 1. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, in terms of filmmaking, yeah.
In terms of the fact that he's trying to deal with a topic, I could maybe then you could say, well, you've got to give him 5 for effort for trying to do something which wasn't just a B-grade horror film. But the film's so bad. I don't know. I'm gonna, but then, like you said, Velvet, it is one of those films you must see before you die. It's one of those films that you just have to have it on a bucket list. So, I'll give it 1.
He still gives it 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so, I mean, I don't know, yeah.
I feel you on that. No, it is a bad movie, but I was just like, I've seen it before and I was entertained. And this time when we were watching it for a review and I get to see the colorized version, I was still entertained. But it is actually rather boring.
Yeah.
The pacing in the beginning's really slow, but just talking about it and like all the stock footage and Bela Lugosi's nonsensical monologues and the devil and there's ghostly people. It's just so bizarre all of a sudden.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah. Oh, dear.
All right, cool. Wow. Okay, wow. This was an interesting night. We had international movies. We had, China/Japan. We had fucking Italy, and of course America. It's
Yes.
like, yeah.
Yes, we
went all over
traveled the globe.
tonight.
We traveled the globe, which is what we like to do here on the Cult Movie Show. So
And our
yes.
ratings went all the way from 1 to 5 tonight.
Yes.
I mean, we literally hit every number, I think, except for 4 tonight.
Oh, there you go.
We had 1, 2, 3, and we hit 5. The only one we missed tonight was 4 on our rating scale.
Oh dear. Well, we should probably wrap it up because I'm about to pass out.
Oh,
So,
all right. All right, my co-host
yeah.
is getting ready to turn into Kermit the Frog, so we
Yeah.
don't want that to happen. All right, so everybody feel free to follow us on Twitter at Cult Movie Show. You can shoot us an email, cultmovieshow@gmail.com. Go ahead and rate us 5 stars on, what are they calling it now? Apple Podcasts. It used to be what we called iTunes Podcasts. Yeah. Whatever podcast format you listen to, just rate us 5 stars. If you don't want to leave a review, I get that. Just write the name of a film that you like, a cult film preferably, and 5 stars, because that really helps us out. And I think that's it. Ready to take it home, Warren?
Yes, I think that is it. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back next week. Sorry for the fact that we missed a couple of weeks. Yeah, sorry.
It happens.
I got ill, so I do apologise. So we'll be back next week with number 64. I think it will be. So looking forward to that. And so yes, we will leave you as always with Alana Evans and Perfect.
Perfect.
So cheers, guys.
Cheers.
We'll see you next week, and just always remember, pull the string. Pull the string!
And the wild buffaloes run.
You're always smiling when I see you. It doesn't matter what you've been through. You always seem to find a way to make it through another day. I'm wishing I could be like you. All your dreams seem to come true. There ain't nothing that don't go your way. You're so perfect, yeah, yeah, yeah. If they knew what I knew, they would never want you. All the secrets and lies, you can't keep it from their eyes, 'cause you're perfect. You break hearts without having a clue of all the damage that you do. I think it's time for you to say you're not perfect, yeah, yeah, yeah. If you knew what I knew, they would never trust you. All your demons and spies, walls filled with lies, 'cause you're perfect. You're so perfect, pretty perfect. Yeah, you're perfect, not so perfect. When I look into your eyes, I can see the